Well, I think people are still trickling in, but we're going to go ahead and get started so we can get through all of our content today. So welcome, everybody. I think this is our third virtual meeting of the year, our last one of 2020. Probably not our last virtual meeting. We'll get to that a little bit later. But I think these have been going pretty well. We're so excited that so many of you are still continuing to join us, even though I think we all miss the fellowship of being in person, and I'm sure you all miss the snacks. I know we do. But still, this gives us an opportunity to get together, share some content. And last time we were able to do breakout rooms with networking, which we will do again in a future meeting. If you really love those, don't worry. So just wanted to thank you all for continuing to stick with us and be part of the Madison Tug. And today, being Veterans Day, we also wanted to give a special thank you to all of our veterans out there. Thank you for your service. All right, Rob, next slide, if you would, please. So today, we have some members of our leadership team online. You'll be hearing a lot from myself, Jen Shepard, and also Rob Robotham. We are your meeting leaders and also two of your TUG leadership team members. You see the full group there. So just wanted to let you all know that we're here and we are always open to your feedback and your suggestions. We love bringing these events to you. We do this completely on a volunteer basis. We really want them to be great learning opportunities for you. And we work as a team so that we can keep bringing you good content. So if you guys have feedback or suggestions on how to continue to improve these meetings, please let us know. Also, always put out the plug that if you guys want to present at any of these meetings, we're always open to additional presenters. So you'll be hearing a lot from Rob and I today, but we would love to share the stage with some of you and hear some of your stories. So specifically today, if you want to switch the agenda there, Rob, we have a couple of presentations for you. So first, we're going to kick things off as we've been doing in these virtual meetings with a poll, just a little fun to get to know you all a little bit better. And then Rob's going to take us through some tips of how he has helped folks at his organization basically get Tableau to do what they thought it couldn't do. So we'll hear a little bit more from him on how he got Tableau to do his bidding. And then in our last meeting, which was in August, I issued a challenge to all of you, or at least those of you who were there, to recreate a Sparkline that I showed you just very briefly. So today I'll walk you through how to create that, and we'll talk a little bit about just some general tips with Sparklines. And then have a brief update for you on some of the Data for Good initiatives that we do. If you guys have been part of these meetings for a while, you know that one of the things that we do as a Madison Tug is reach out to nonprofit organizations in our local community and do some free data visualization for them. So we've had these two projects with the Nature Conservancy of Wisconsin and the Madison Cat Project we've been working on this year remotely, and we want to share some of that work back out with you. And then after that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what our plans are for 2021, and would love to see more of you get involved. We also do volunteering that's not related to data out in the community. That, unfortunately, wasn't something we were able to do much of this year because of COVID, but I hope we'll be able to get back into that more for next year. Then we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do in 2021 as a TUG, and that's the day. So, all right, Rob, let's get to know our audience here.
So the next thing we'd really like to do is have a quick survey. We're going to use Kahoot. So using whatever device you have handy, if you could go to https://kahoot.it. And once you get there, you'll need the number that's on your screen, the 7922461. And I'm going to switch screens here, but we should still come up with that same information on the screen. There we go. And again, it's here, we're seeing people come in, it's kahoot.it, and there's the number.
All right, thank you so many of you for playing. That's great. Nuclear, Sean, what a fascinating nickname. People still joining. See, we're up to almost 100 participants too. That's fantastic. Those of you who missed our welcome, welcome. Look at all these people joining. Oh, I have some guesses who some of these people might be. Dan Mazzocchi, are you here? some of you with just your initials can't even guess.
Well, things have started to
All
slow
right,
down. So
yeah, that's what I'm seeing too.
I think we'll get started. What you're going to see is on my screen, which you'll be seeing on your screen, there's going to be a question, and then it'll come up with 4 different colors and shapes. Each shape and color will be coordinated, so you'll see that on whatever device you're on doing this, maybe it's another window on the same PC or in your phone, wherever you are, you'll just get the shape and color so you can answer the questions. The first couple of questions are single answer, and then after that, there's some of the questions that you can answer with more than one time. And the screen will flash and tell you can make more than one choice. So let's get started. We have 30 seconds allocated for each question. So the first question, where are you today?
I'll be very surprised if we get any other countries, but we might. Wouldn't that be exciting?
You never know.
Little Madison tug. Let's see.
We have 2 from the.
We do.
You never know. There's some people lurking in the background or people traveling.
Yeah, that could be.
Mostly local.
Cool.
Yeah, the next question is also, where do you work? I think this question would have been very different if we would have asked it a year ago. The answers would be different.
Yes, I'm sure they would.
We're seeing a lot of knowledge workers here, so almost everyone is at home. A few of them, it's not a change. Very few traveling. Maybe those are the 2 that are out of the country.
Could be.
How long have you been using Tableau?
I love seeing this question at our meetings because we always get some people who are new and we always have some people who are old hats. That's not very nice. I don't know better. Look at that. Interesting distribution. I was going to say, we usually get more on the 2 ends and less in the middle, but this time we've got a lot of experienced folks.
I've seen too many curves with that shape lately.
Yeah.
This question, you get how do you Tableau? You can answer with as many of these as you want.
Oh, yeah. Look at all the desktop users.
A lot of desktop
a lot
users.
Of server, too.
Yeah. One new person here. Welcome. Again, a multi-select question. Where do you do your analytics? You can choose as many as you'd like. Interesting, there's a small Alteryx group here. In the Milwaukee area, there tend to be a lot of Alteryx users at their Tableau users meetings. Yeah, what do you want to see at these TUG meetings? What types of events are great for you? And this is a screenshot of one of our former meetings when we could meet in person. Well, it looks like we're headed in the right direction with our presentations today, so that's really good. Very few interested in server management, but a small group there. Maybe we can get something on that in the future too to blend in with everything. Last question, when will life get back to normal or a new normal?
That little image, Rob, that's great.
Well, that's not mine. If you Google image, what is it, COVID ends or pandemic ends or something like that, it'll pop up. And there's that same shape curve again. Looks like it's going to take a while. You know, great news this week about the vaccine that may be very effective. And if we can get it distributed and people to use it, I think that may really help.
It's a bummer. I only had 2 right in this whole thing.
Well, I think we're going to go right into our next presentation as long as it's me. And this is going to be a little different than what I had originally thought about. We had a lot of questions at Grande, and we've got a big push on to replace a lot of work being done in Excel with reporting that's done in Tableau. And what we've realized is as we move through this process, we're just saving a tremendous amount of time, and our analysts are able to do more with time spent doing analysis and less time manipulating data and moving information around. Originally, I was going to do something on speed tipping. And as I started to look around and think about other things, you know, there's a lot of good speed tipping content out there. If you go out to this year's Tableau conference-ish, there were 2 speed tipping sessions. There have been speed tipping sessions of one form and another with Jeffrey Schaefer and others over the years, and they're all out on YouTube. I encourage you to go out and look at those because there's some really great content there. And I didn't want to duplicate what was already there. So I'm going to do something with a little more context. And really wanted to start out, as Jen said earlier, you know, thank you to all of those of you who had served, you know, to make our country free and to keep our country free. You know, we owe you a huge debt of gratitude. For those of you who don't know me, my background is production agriculture. My education's in dairy science and ag and applied economics. I spent the last 27 plus years at Grande. And a lot of what I do at Grande is helping drive business decisions through process creation, transformation, and communication. And I really want to take data, transform it to information, knowledge, and hopefully ultimately wisdom. And for those who don't know much about Grande Cheese, we're an independent cheese company. We make specialty Italian cheeses. We have one owner. We've been around for about 80 years and about 1,200 associates here in Wisconsin, with about 60 that are scattered across the United States in our sales department. Everything we do at Grande starts with a group of family-owned farms, about 80 here in Wisconsin, plus 2 in extreme northern Illinois that supply our milk. And their real focus with quality milk is keeping their cows clean, dry, and comfortable. Because animal health and well-being is on top of mind for them every day, because that translates directly into producing the quality product we need so we can market their milk as cheese. Speaking of marketing that milk, we market our cheese through food service distribution into independent pizzerias and Italian restaurants. Your local neighborhood mom and pop pizzeria is Grande's customer. We have about 35,000 pizzerias that we service. And if you remember nursery rhymes as a child, you remember Little Miss Muffet sitting in her tuffet eating her curds and whey. As we take the milk from these farms and knit the casein proteins into curds that become cheese, what's left over is a product called whey. And whey is about 98% water. The other 2% has lactose, which is a milk sugar, and some other proteins called whey proteins. And those whey proteins are really, really great food. And they can be used in a a whole variety of items where they have different flavor and functional characteristics. And if you grab something from your cupboard today, almost anything that's packaged, you'll see some sort of a whey protein in there. WPC or whey protein concentrate or isolates. Some of it may be Grande, a couple products on screen are some of those that our product ends up in. And why Tableau instead of Excel? And I want us to talk about, first of all, what is our job as knowledge workers? And it's really to enable management to make better business decisions. And as we look at a transformation to Tableau, you really need to demonstrate the value of visualization, but we still need to keep in mind that we need to give business users both what they need and what they want, because what they want is not something that they have a personal desire for. It's something they want to do a better job at everything they do every day. And we also need to make their life easier. And anytime we can make someone's life easier, take away the mundane tasks and let them focus on the things where they can add value, you're going to make life better. Our old friend Excel, some of us have been using it since the mid-1980s, and businesses know Excel. And we've been told businesses run on Excel, and they do. But visualizations provide insight, and visualizations in Tableau can go beyond what we can do in Excel. Spreadsheet modeling is what Excel was designed for, and it's really great when you need to change your model assumptions and interactively work with them. As we look at visualization modeling in Tableau, it's more about asking questions to the data and pulling the answers out from the data, letting the data tell us what's happening. Excel is everywhere, whether it's Excel or some sort of open office like LibreOffice that you can get free. And every business user is a developer. No matter who you are, if you open Excel, you can make changes. There's more control when we start to look at what's happening with Tableau. And some of that control is very good as we try to move towards one source of the truth. And with Tableau Server and Tableau Online, we can really make Tableau ubiquitous. You don't have to have a desktop license to use it. And one thing I've heard quite a few times in the lower left on this slide is, I don't really need a chart, just a pivot table. Really? Can you really draw insights out of a huge table with thousands of numbers? And remember, visualizations rock. I just got a quick example here. On the left under the Excel logo, it is Tableau because I didn't want to take the time to copy the information from Tableau back into Excel just so I could paste it down to a PowerPoint slide. I could look at this to determine what's going on in my simulated plant and find out how my cheese processing is progressing and what's going on if I scrolled through screen after screen after screen of data. Or I could look at a quick visualization and say, hey, are all these colors in the right order? If these colors are in the right order, things are going well. If the days in the past are all green, everything went well. And as we look at this with Tableau with real data, as you hover over each mark, a visualization comes up to give you even more detail about what's happening, what went right, what went wrong. It's possible to do some of these things in Excel, but it's extremely difficult. Our business users keep telling us we need pivot tables. We can't use Tableau. We can't use a Tableau report because in pivot tables, I can add and remove columns. Every user can. We can expand and collapse rows. We can have custom filters. Well, we can do all that in Tableau and make it look and act like a pivot table if that's what you really need. Our users have told us they need Excel's conditional formatting, and we can do a lot of the same conditional formatting in Tableau using legend per measure. We can also use custom shapes to do some of it. And we've given quite a bit of pushback to some of our business users when they say, I need something exactly like this. And why do you need that? Because that's the way Excel does it. Well, if there's a business reason, we'll make it happen. If there's not, maybe there's a better way to do it. And one that came up not too long ago was, well, I really need that in a pie chart. I need to show the last 10 years of sales where every year is a slice in a pie chart. That's not really the best way to show sales over time. So one of the things that happens with Excel is every user grabs a copy and they do their own charting, their own visualization. With Tableau, we can add a little bit of structure around that and help users develop things that might be a little more in line with answering the questions from the data in a better way. One of the processes that we've gone through several times at Grande, which you may have in your organization, is we've users that tell us the data is wrong. And we know this happens. The source system and data is not perfect. Process comes up and they say, well, I grab the data from the source system of the data warehouse and I put it in Excel. I correct any errors that are there, create a report, mail it out as a PDF, and it's done. And next week I'll do the same thing. when asked, what if an executive comes to you and says, how does this week compare to last week, or this week compare to a year ago? They say, well, that's easy because the source system is still wrong. So I save a copy of the spreadsheet every week. And I'll just pull up same week last year and this week this year and put the two side by side, create a spreadsheet model that compares the two, and email that out as a PDF. And what we've been successful in doing is, instead of going through a process of pulling data into Excel, we pull data from the data warehouse into a Tableau report that follows business rules that the business users tell us how to implement, to show them any data which looks like it might be a problem. They can then correct it in the source system. It flows to the data warehouse and into a report, which can be run by anyone at any time. And we have a single source of the truth. At this point, that's probably enough death by PowerPoint. I'm sure you've had plenty of PowerPoint and would really rather see something else. So I'm going to switch out here and go into Tableau. If everyone's friend here in Tableau is the Superstore. So I'm going to come into the Superstore, and a couple of things you notice right away in the Superstore is the Superstore has created folders. So as you're creating things in Tableau, sometimes it's really handy. All the dimensions and measures fit on one screen here, so it's not bad. But if you have much larger data sources, more columns, sometimes it's really nice. And creating folders is pretty simple. We grab a few things we might be interested in, like sales, quantity, and profit. And I'm control clicking because you can't see my mouse. I can just click on the little caret here and create a new folder and call these Rob's measures. And now we have a folder with Rob's measures to very easily, organize things and pull them together where it makes it easier for me to see what's going on. And this is really helpful if you have a large join created and you need to pull things from all different places. The other thing that's here in Tableau is there are hierarchies, and they've created a few hierarchies for us here in Superstore. For example, if I bring in state, from state, I can drill down to city and then drill down again to postal code. And this is starting to look a little bit like a pivot table where I can expand and collapse different rows of data. So functionality that's there. And one of them that's built into Tableau with almost everything, if I look at order date and I double click on it, if I keep double clicking on it, it will expand out, or I can use the controls here in the pills, or as a user would see it, we have controls here on each different element, each different mark. But one of the things I notice as I look at this is I'm expanding from year to quarter to month to day, which is not how Grande creates a hierarchy with our dates. So I'm going to create my own hierarchy. I'm just going to create a calculator field. I'm going to call it fiscal year of order date. And I'm just going to say that's the year of order date. I'm going to make a couple copies of that. Just click on duplicate, and I'll duplicate again. Pick one of these, and I'm going to make this one for my fiscal period of order date. And fiscal period in Grande logo is a month. And I'm going to make this last one the week. And when I was doing this earlier today, I spelled week W-E-A-K, and that does not work. So now that I have these, if I want to create a hierarchy, first thing I'm going to do is grab all three of these, and I'm going to make them dimensions, because for what I'm doing today, I'd rather have them as dimensions. But I can just grab one of these, like fiscal period, drop it on top of order date, and I've now created a hierarchy, and I can add things to that hierarchy. And one of the things I like to add to hierarchies a lot of times is a day of the week. So I'm going to create a calculator field called day of the week, and I can do that using date name in Tableau, and just weekday and whatever the name of the date is. And I drop that in the hierarchy, it'll join in. I'm going to collapse these and get rid of these and just bring up my fiscal year. And now you can see as I drill into these, I'm going to get expanding and collapsing rows, just like a pivot table. And I see that my week starts on Sunday. Now I know that Grande's week doesn't start on Sunday. Grande's week starts on Monday. There are a lot of different ways you can do this to convert this into true fiscal calendar. You also see that sometimes weeks are split between months. It's not a 4-4-5 calendar. It takes a lot of calculations to build it in Tableau. Can be done. But the best way to do this is to have a date dimension table. And your company probably has a date dimension table. It might be in the finance and accounting department. Somebody owns it. If you don't, there are others that are available online. If I join to that, I will get the fiscal periods I expect, and it'll take care of those transitions month to month, week to week, a 4-4-5 calendar if that's what you use. The other thing you'll notice is that there are some weeks that don't seem to have Sundays, and this one doesn't have a Sunday or a Monday, and that's because there's no data out there for those days. You know, Superstore, this is the data as it is. If you're interested in saying, well, how do I fill these in? Go out and ask Uncle Google, key in Tableau and data laddering, or fill in missing data. There are lots of methods out there. There have been some great presentations at Tableau conferences about that and things you could do that way. Let me get to another slide here. See what we want to do next. Now, one of the things we like to do a lot of times is, let's show us a single measure. So I'm just going to grab sales. We'll put sales onto text. And now we have our sales, and our sales numbers are there, and that's great, but there's no title. Well, what if I add something else? I can grab profit. If I bring profit in, now I have sales and profit. I have titles. Well, that's great. Measure names showed up. Measure names is on columns, which is why I have titles. And as soon as I remove one of those, the titles are gone. If I only want one measure and I want titles, I can just grab measure values and drop it right down there under that one value, and it's going to show up here. The title is going to appear the way we'd expect it to appear. And Tableau has done the work of adding measure names to both columns and filters, and then filtering for just a single measure name. So it's a little bit of an override of Tableau's base functionality, and you can get things to put a title where you really want a title. It's not often you have a single measure on table, but it does happen. Now, let's say if we want, I'm going to bring in profit instead. So I'm just going to swap that out, put profit. And then, of course, my Tableau fixed everything for me and took away my title, but I've got profit. And I really want to color profit. And if I look at this, it's all there. And I say, gee, maybe black and red would be good. All I have to do is, create something that tells me, is profit. I can just grab profit and drop it on color would give me something. It's going to color them, and we're going to see they're positive and negative, and Tableau is taking care of that by where they are. But that's kind of ugly and not exactly what I was thinking about. Maybe I just want to have something in my tooltip that colors it instead. And if I want to do that, what I'm going to have to do is create two different copies of profit. So I'm going to come out here and create another calculated field. I'm going to say negative profit. And I'm going to cheat by pasting this in. So if our sum, and we're summing it here so that we don't look at line level, we want to see it summed up the same way it is in our visualization. If the profit is less than 0, then we're going to show it. And by default, what Tableau is saying here is else null. Now, I can key that in or not key that in. So it's either going to show me the profit or it's going to put a null in there. By default, this is already there, so I don't have to show that. And along with negative profit, I'm going to want something that's a non-negative profit. So I can just duplicate that, edit the second one, and make that a non. I can't type today. And that's greater than or equal to 0. I'd love to call that positive, but my friend who sits next to me at work is a mathematician. It's not positive, it's non-negative. So one of the things I can do is I can take both of these now, my negative profit and my non-negative profit, and add them to my tooltip. And now as I hover over this, I see that I have both of them appearing. Except only one of them appears at a time. Here I'm only seeing the negative. Here I'm seeing the non-negative. So if I edit my tooltip, I can take away some of the text that I really don't need. Come here. I'll use a mouse today. But I'm going to just take this negative profit and I can highlight the whole thing or just one piece of it. It really doesn't matter. And I'm going to make that red. So now I'm showing a red negative profit and a black profit. And as I hover over these, only one or the other will show because one is always negative. Now we've talked about some of the uses that users want to see that simulate a pivot table, and we can come in here and we can take rows and expand or collapse. Users would really like to be able to control what columns are visible. And I know I can do that in Tableau. If I have profit here, I can add in, oops, I'm actually going to do it this way, go in here. I can choose, I want quantity and sales also. I can also drag them over here to the measures value tab. So and change their order. Whoops, I'm not going to do that. We're going to grab quantity again, array of quantities, sales, quantity, and profit. Make sure I get all three in here. So I have three in here. This is not exposed to users as you publish the Tableau server online unless they're allowed to edit. But one of the things you can do is just go up to this filter for measure names and show the filter. Now users can simply click on things and add or remove columns at will. But one of the things that you notice is some things appear here that you really don't, like number of records appears. Now, and we've got, count, and that's the count of the migrated data because it's older data and new versions of Tableau. Say if it's old, we'll call it migrated. If I don't want those to show up, all I need to do is come down here, and migrated data count, and I can click on the pill and choose hide. Now, as I hide it, we'd expect it to go away here. It will as soon as I make a change. It's now not in the list. So only measures that are visible here are there. I'd like to do that for the number of records, but sometimes number of records is really useful. So what I'm going to do is create a calculated field called NOR and make it number of records. It's just a copy of number of records. Now I can come over here and hide number of records. I didn't want to hide it, sorry. And now you see number of records has disappeared. My NOR is there, but if I grab NOR and I'm just going to drag it up here and convert it to a measure, or excuse me, a dimension, it's no longer a measure, so it doesn't appear. Now, if I want to bring this into a visualization later, I might need it as a measure, but I can bring it into another visualization and still get that functionality. And we'll get to that in just a minute. The other thing that users ask is, if I'm in Excel, I can grab the equivalent of a pill, grab a dimension, down to be in the lower right-hand corner of your Excel spreadsheet by default, and I can drag it off of rows or columns, drag it onto filters, filter it, drag it back up. I wish I could do that here. Wish I could have a published Tableau report that did that. So let's add in something like state. We'll get rid of this and say maybe I just want to keep Arizona, Minnesota because they just had a big snowstorm, and Wisconsin because most of us are in Wisconsin. And from here we can choose keep only. And now suddenly we just have the three states. It's similar functionality. It's a user training issue, not a product that can't do what needs to be done issue. And we can take state off of filters. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes to know what I'm doing. The next thing that comes up in users of Excel will say, well, we can change the order of these and let's put these in an order that makes more sense. We'd really like to have these shaded in the background to tell us, which ones are greatest, which ones are least. And we know that we can just take our measure values and drop it on color. And we get something that's really ugly and probably almost impossible to see from your standpoint. So maybe that didn't quite do what we wanted to do, because that colored the text. If we change the mark type here to a bar for a bar chart, there's now itty bitty little bars here along each side. What we need to do is take those bars and tell Tableau, what size to make them. We can try to go in the size pill. Looks like it's almost all the way maximized. And here's where that other number of records comes in. So I'm going to grab number of records and put it on size. And Tableau is going to tell me you can't put a dimension on size. Size needs a measure. So I am going to create this to a measure, and I'm going to make it the average of those. So it's the average number of records. So every row is exactly the same because it's an average of one, however many times I have it. And I now have the backgrounds, but I really don't want all of them colored. I don't care about quantity. Excel lets me color each one different. What this is telling me is, these numbers are small, and this 91 and 64 are large, the thousands. I want each column colored independently. And Tableau added this several years ago with a use separate legends function that comes from clicking on the pill on the color marks card. Once I use separate legends on the right-hand side of the screen, I see each of the different measures that I have, and I've given the opportunity to color them individually. So I could go into the first one and edit the colors. One thing that I like to do is a lot of times you don't need anything. I make colors diverging, just make it 2 steps. And from 2 steps, make each end of the spectrum white. Now it's going to color this bar in the background underneath quantity from white to white. So no matter what size it is, it's white because it's from white to white. And you can go into each of these and make them independent. Maybe I want to make something here that looks like green and gold, because in Wisconsin, we want some Packers colors. And you notice that these are now colored independent of the others because they have individual cards here. And going back to the default Tableau colors, which are orange and gold, which just happen to be Bears colors too. Well, not orange and gold, they're orange and blue, sorry. So now we have something that has the functionality we need, even though it's really ugly. Okay, how are we doing on time? We are, oh, we've got a few minutes left. So now I'd like to do something a little bit different that, I tend to do a lot in Tableau because it can do it and it can do it well. And that's to create a bar and bar chart. So I'm going to grab fiscal year again here, drop fiscal year on columns. And then I'm going to grab my sales and make a bar chart, and my profit and make another bar chart. And one of the things that I tend to do with every bar chart I create is go in my format, I choose the lines, and I remove these pesky little lines in the background because they mess up all my white space. Now I can take measured names again and drop it on color so that my sales and profit are different colors. And if I come up to one of these pills, I can tell it to put them on the same chart and make it a dual axis chart. So I have them both in the same chart. And Excel in its, Tableau in its infinite wisdom says, you must really want to have circles instead of bars. I really want bars, so I'm going to change it back to bars. And if I hover over these, my tooltip's going to tell me, yeah, this is about 50,000 and that's about 300,000. So I really need to synchronize my axes so they're the same. And now I get values that make sense. But it's still not exactly what I want. It's hard to tell what they are and tell them apart. So I'm going to take measure names and also put it on size to make one bar wider than the other. And I get a card over here where I can edit the sizes, and you can play around with this and do lots of neat things and make them different sizes, different relationships. Now that I have those there, my manager comes to me and says, yep, that's great. I can see the relationship between sales and profit, but how does that relate to quantities? I said, that's easy. I'll take quantity, drag it on here, and I'll make it dual axis. And there is no dual axis. There is no triple axis. It's simply not there, but there's a way to do it. And that's really to conserve pills. So because I can only join two pills here, I want to put all three of these on the same chart with only two pills. And I can do that by grabbing fiscal year, dropping it out here. And then I'm going to grab my measure names, the measure names here, and I'm going to choose the measures I want. Maybe I will. I had sales and I had profit, and I would like to see those. And I'm going to drop my measure values out here and tell it I really want a bar chart so it doesn't change later. Get rid of my pesky lines that I don't like for some weird reason. And now if I'm going to take measure names, I'm also going to drop measure names on color. And there I have both on one chart. The only thing I notice is I've got 484,000 and I've got 49,000. It's stacking these on top of each other. Well, up in the analysis, I can tell Tableau whether or not to stack marks. So I say, okay, don't stack the marks. So now they're not stacked. And if I were to change the order it displays them here by dragging them around, I can see that my profit disappears. My profit is now behind sales. So I can control which one's in front, but I really need to do the same thing I did before and come back up here to size and tell it that I want the two bars to be different size based on their measure names. Make those just a little wider so they're easier to see. And if I want to, I can add another measure to this. I could add where's my quantity? Quantity right here. And now quantity is this little tiny red bar at the bottom. It kind of works, but it doesn't really work. I can't add quantity on a different axis just by bringing in the measure values, but I can grab quantity now and bring it in over here, come to the new marks card that shows up and tell Tableau I'd really like quantity to be a line. It's a big fat line, and when I click on size, I really can't do much. I can try, but if I try to change anything, it changes everywhere. And what I realize is that on my size card, I have measure names. So if I take measure names off size, it's still here on this marks card for my measure values. It's not here for the quantity. And then I can make this a dual axis. There's dual axis. So I now have a dual axis where I'm showing a line over bars and they're bar and bar. So another thing that, Excel has a quick way to do this. There are a couple different ways to do this in Tableau. Now, one of the other things that I'd like to do is I look at this and say, wouldn't it be great if I could show last year's sales? That'd be great. I could have this year's sales and profit and last year's sales. And there are a couple different things I could do. I could add another bar to this. And first, let's go calculate last year's sales. And the easiest way I found to do things like this, unless you're good at typing in table calculations, is just grab sales and let Tableau do the work. So I'm going to tell it I want to do a quick table calculation, and I want to see percent difference. This is one of my favorites in Tableau, is the percent difference. Then I'm going to take this pill and drag it off the visualization and materialize it over here so it now becomes a new measure. And I'm going to say, let's just call it sales percent difference. And I'm just going to make a couple copies of that. I'm going to duplicate it twice because I know I want to use this. Come on. Click in the right place, Rob. Duplicate that. And if I edit one of those copies, instead of sales percent difference, I'm just going to call it sales difference. And the nice thing about using the quick table calculation, then materializing the pill, is Tableau gives you the code. So you may know that the difference is this year's sales minus last period's sales. And if you've used a bunch of table calcs and done this, you'll know that lookup is the function you need. If you didn't, let Tableau do the work for you. I'm going to take out some of these extra parentheses. And so we have a sales difference. The other thing is maybe I just want to know last period's sales. Sales, I'm going to call that prior period. And again, Tableau has done the work for us the first time, and we just copied it. At a programmer who's many years senior to me, which takes quite a bit, who told me one time the last piece of original computer code was written at IBM in the 1960s. Since then, we've all gotten very good at copy and paste. I don't know if that's completely true, but there could be something there. So I'm again going to take measure names just to see what work we've done here and grab measure values. First I'm going to take measure names and just choose those that I want. I'm going to choose everything that says sales. And I could do that using a wildcard, but it's easier just to click on them with this view. I'm going to take measure values and drop it on text. And I am not seeing anything that I want to see. I know why I'm not. We're going to drag these in all at once. So I'm going to just drag profit in there so I know which ones I've dragged in and out. And Tableau does this. Drag those in, drop them on. And I am seeing nothing, which is really disappointing. Okay, everybody loves it when this happens. I'm just going to drop some text. We'll just create a new worksheet. It's better.
I was just going to ask if you meant to still have that pill on your row shelf or not.
I didn't. You're right. Didn't want that out there at all. But anyway, I can just grab sales. Grab sales on the text. Drop profit on with it. That isn't what I want to do there. I'll just do it the right way. Measure names, filters. Come here. Measure names, come into filters. Oh, none. We'll check these. We'll check profit just in case, because I might want an extra, and I want measure value names here, and I'm going to turn that sideways just so it's easier to see, and I want measure values to replace that on text. And that's exactly what I thought would happen, because these are table calcs. It doesn't always like to do them this way, but I can drag them off and then just drag them back on. Percent difference, and prior period. Now, one of the things you'll notice is that there was some formatting done, and these are all as percentages. And there are a lot of different ways I can change that, but I'm just going to go into difference and prior period. I'm going to change the default because I want these to change everywhere in my workbook. So I need a default number format. I'm going to make a currency with no decimal places. Now we're getting values that look reasonable. One thing that you'll notice is there are no values up here on the top. And the reason that is it's trying to compare 2016 to the prior year. And if I expand out my hierarchy, it's comparing month to prior month. And there is no prior data, so there's just nothing to show. And there are a few different things I can do to take care of that. One of them that works really well is Tableau's default table calculation, which is called index. So I tend to create a pill called index in almost every spreadsheet or every workbook I create. And if I'm just drag index in is another measure, what you're going to see is this basically a count. And you can work with this table calc and create just about anything you need and do things different ways, but it's going to count. And what I'm going to do is grab index now and throw it up on filters. And I'm going to say index has to be at least 2. Now, what we'd expect is all of these are going to disappear. And the reason they're going to disappear is because I'm filtering and bringing data in. If I say it's at least 2, if there's nothing there, there won't be any 2. But that doesn't happen, only the first row goes away. And the reason is Tableau's order of operations. What happens is Tableau calculates the data that it's going to display, and it does its initial calculations before it does table calculations. So a table calculation filter happens after other filters. And if you want to learn more about order of operations, there's lots of great stuff out there on the Tableau sites and on others. You can learn about order of operations and how to use Tableau's order of operations to do what you want to. But now if I go back to the chart that we had created, let's get to the right one here. I said, I wanted to add prior year to this. I could now just grab my sales prior period and drag it in here. And it's going to create another bar. It's this little kind of greenish bar behind things. Yeah, that's just kind of weird. It works, it's there, but maybe there's a better way to do it. And one of the ways that we've done it at Grande, instead of doing that, is to take that sales for prior period. I'll just add it to tooltip so it's here. Then I'm going to go into analytics and I'm going to grab a reference line and bring it out here and put it on each cell and tell it to use. This prior period, maybe that has to be discrete. It's very possible it has to be discrete. So I'm going to try adding another reference line on a cell. Now see if it shows up. And it doesn't. And I know it should. And there's something simple I'm not doing correctly. Sales prior period. All right, Jen, do you know why this is not showing up? It really should. Oh, I'm going to put it up here.
Yeah, I'm trying to think too. I normally put it on detail, not tooltip, but I don't know if that would matter.
It shouldn't, and it did. Yeah, it worked this morning, which really helps a lot. Oops, analytics, reference line, I'm going to drag it in, put it in the cell, and I should be able to choose that from. And it shouldn't matter if it's discrete. That isn't going to matter. That really shouldn't matter. So I get all these wonderful lines. Well, this should work, and it did work this morning. When I figure it out, I'll let everybody know why it didn't work. But
one of the comments in the chat says that you're putting it on the quantity, the line chart measure card, and it needs to go in the measure values marks card.
Yeah, just put it on all. Where am I? Prior period, there it is. And there it is because I tried to put it on both of them. So I can format this to be a little wider and some funky color so that I can see it. As you see, it is last year's sales, and you can add labels to it and edit it. And the same thing is going to happen as you expand it out. Now it's going to be prior month sale. If you want the same sales from the same period prior year or same week prior year, you need to edit the table calculations to tell Tableau how you expect this to change. One last thing, and this is, I think, kind of interesting. Before I said that, a lot of times I add this day a week calculation. And day a week calculation is not only handy for just knowing what day of the week it is, because sometimes that really helps you understand the data, but sometimes it has great meaning in the data. And for those of you who were with us last quarter, we saw a chart that looked almost like this. DHS here in Wisconsin is doing just an excellent job during this whole pandemic of trying to keep everyone as safe and healthy as possible. And they're also doing just a tremendous job of working with data and presenting data to us in a very real and meaningful way. And what I did is I took their data, which is available on their website, and created a chart that looks exactly like the one they created, and they're using Tableau, so it should look exactly like that. It's got each day's new COVID cases and then a 7-day average. And you're thinking to yourself as you look at this, yes, 7 days average is great. Why not a 10-day average? Why not 15? Why not 30? What's going on? And one of the reasons is that there is bias in the data caused by day of week. So the day of the week is actually causing bias. And the reason that it's causing bias is because sampling and testing are different depending on day of week. There are less people, fewer people, is the right word, sampled and tested on weekends. Labs have less employees on weekends, so samples tend to back up and take a little longer. So there's a day of week bias. So if I would take this exact same chart and just drag a pill in, let me actually go into the editor here, the day of week pill in along with date, I'm going to get a separate chart for each day of the week. And in this case, this is not a 7-day average. These are individual days. And you notice how everything smooths out within each chart compared to the really jagged chart here with all the gray bars. So as you're working with your data and looking at things, sometimes it's handy just to create some extra calculations and ask, what is causing bias in my data or could be causing bias in my data? And can I eke that out from what I'm doing? And with that, I think we're just about, well, I've got 31 seconds left, so it's about time for me to sign off and transfer things back to Jen. And we can go into.
Awesome, thanks, Rob. Are there any questions specific to Rob's presentation, Pat, that we should handle right now?
Not that I'm seeing.
Okay, sounds good. All right, hi everybody, it's me again. I'm going to be talking through the Sparkline challenge that I issued at the end of my portion of our last meeting. So for those of you who were there, hopefully this looks familiar. I don't know if any of you actually gave it a try on your own. If not, that's fine. We'll go through it together right now. I'll go ahead and share my screen. And I do think I'm dealing with a little bit of an internet lag here, so I won't be whipping around Tableau as fast as Rob did, but hopefully the technology cooperates with me and you all can see the presentation. Okay, so here is the Sparkline that I was talking about. So if you built just a basic line chart in Tableau, you get something like this across the top. And Pat, can you just confirm for a second that you're seeing Tableau right now?
I do see it.
Okay, thank you. So if you build just a basic line chart in Tableau, you get this. But what I showed you last time, something that I had created for some of the COVID work that we did at my organization, the Department of Children and Families, was a little fancier. It looked like this. It had a very clear call out of the starting and end points. It had this trend line, just looked a little nicer. And so what I'm going to show you today is how to build this. So I have a very minimal data set. You can use your own data. You could follow along in Superstore. We really only need 2 basic fields. We want to look at something by date. So if I bring, in this case, request date out here, we just want our continuous date. We're going to look at every day. And then we need some sort of measure. So this is my measure. And there, just that easily, I have the basic line chart. But to start turning this into the Sparkline, we just need to do a few things. So with a line chart, you can actually have Tableau just give you the value labels for the beginning and the end. If you go in here under label, you can show your labels and say, just show me the line end. And you do have some ability to control the formatting here. So we could make this some ridiculously large size, like 38. We could match our mark color. We can kind of get there. Get rid of our, oops, sorry. Get rid of our headers here, so it's looking a little bit more like a Sparkline. So you can do it that way. It still already looks a little bit better than just the basic line chart. But the reason I like doing it the way that I'm going to show you in just a second is because it gives you a lot more flexibility to then do additional things with those endpoints. So the way that I like to do these is to actually make a copy. It's to do a dual axis so that I have my line is one axis and then my endpoints are separate. So to do that, what I want to do is have a calculation that says only give me the measure if it's one of the endpoints. And so I use table calculations for that. And I know, although we have an audience who are pretty familiar with Tableau. Table calculations are not necessarily something that everybody's comfortable with. So I want to show you how this works with an actual listing of all the dates. So here's all the dates in my data set, and my calculation looks like this. It says, if first is 0 or last is 0, then give me that measure. And so let me show you if I just take this part. So if you have the table calculation of first, what Tableau does is it labels the oldest data point 0, and then counts downward, or counts backward, I should say, down to the end. And if I use this table calculation of last, it does the opposite. My last data point gets to 0, and then everything else is counted out by 1. And so my calculation then says if the first or the last equals 0, and remember those two got the zeros, then give me my measure. So if I actually put this on instead, you see that's exactly what I get. My first data point is labeled, and my last data point is labeled, and nothing else in between gets labeled. And so that's what I want to use on my sheet. Instead of labeling here, I'm going to bring this new calculation out, and you see it's already starting to take shape. I've got these little circles here only at the beginning and at the end. And so on that marks card is where I want to turn on my labels. They're still ridiculously big. Let's make that something a little more reasonable, like size 14 or maybe even 12. And I want to put that label in the middle of my circles. We'll do that centered. And then I want to make my circle bigger so that it takes over. Whoops. Sorry, I actually have circles. I have lines. There we go. Make them circles. And I need my text to not be the same color as my circle. That would help. Okay, so now hope you guys are seeing this starting to take shape. We've got our line up here. We've got our endpoints labeled. Then all we have to do is bring those together as a dual axis and synchronize it. And now we have those endpoints there at the front and ends of our lines. We'll get rid of our headers. This nulls warning is because on this pill, my endpoints pill, all the points in between are not being shown, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to get rid of that indicator. And then just like Rob, I also get rid of all my extra lines that I don't want. So we'll get rid of all of our grid lines and our axis rulers and our column dividers and our row dividers. There, nice clean space. And then the last piece that I had in the exercise example was just a trend line. So I just brought a trend line out here. We'll put it on our pill that has all of the data points, the measure. And then you can adjust the formatting of that if you like. So we can just make that a little bit narrower, something like that. And there, that's basically what I had as the Sparkline. So it just takes a couple of extra steps to go from your basic line chart into the Sparkline. And then if you want to adjust it even further, you can maybe make your line a little bit thicker. You can make your circles bigger, however you want. So a little bit of extra work, but it's just a nicer looking chart when the emphasis is on where you were and where you are, but you still want to see the trend in between. And now the reason I said that I like being able to do this with a dual axis instead of just using Tableau's native ability to label the beginning and end is because now you can start to do some pretty cool things with these endpoints. So maybe it'd be really interesting to see quickly with color, for example, whether I was above or below a certain target. So I can do that with another calculation where I can say, if my measure, in this case, the count of capacity, is greater or equal to some threshold. So you see my numbers here are 58 and 78. So what if we started with 60? So I could just do that and use that color on my circles. And now what you see is this one gets a different color because it's below my target. And this one has a different color yet. And if we're going to go with this approach, we might want to make our line chart something more neutral. So we're just focusing on these two endpoints. But you don't have to put a hard-coded number in there. You have all kinds of flexibility. So instead of it being a specific value, we could make it a parameter and let our user say, I want to know if it's above or below this number that I care about. And so maybe they care about 70 and maybe somebody else cared about 60. So with a parameter, I guess we do have time to do that. I wasn't necessarily going to show that part, but I will. So we can just make a parameter that's called something like target, and we'll just make it integers, and we'll go ahead and start it at 60, and maybe it only makes sense to show from 1 to 100 or something. You can decide for your data what makes sense there. And now in my field, instead of saying it's greater than equal to a specific number, I say it's greater than equal to my parameter value. And then we'll show this parameter. And so now as I change this, there we go, I put it lower and this number has changed. So you can let your user have the ability to decide what that target is. We actually use this a lot in my job at the Department of Children and Families. I build a lot of performance metrics where we're looking at how we're doing relative to our goals on a specific thing, like how many kids who have been taken into the child welfare system are coming back home in a timely manner, things like that. And so we'll use this method of having these circles that are color-coded so that people can quickly see at a glance whether we're doing well in general or not so well. So you can do it with a parameter. You could also do it using the data itself. So one option might be to do something like this, where I want to know, am I generally above or below this trend in my data? So we might do something like the window average, meaning of all the data points that I'm showing right now, is this point above or below what the average is? So we can change it to that instead. And you can see our average is, or our trend is pointing down where our average is somewhere higher than 58. So you can do a lot of things with it using this dual axis method that you can't do if you just simply label the endpoint. So that's why I like to do this method. It also can become really helpful if you're wanting to look at more than one line at a time. So if, for example, we have something like this, and all I did here, I'll take that back out again. So we have our general trend line, and maybe we want to look at it for certain product types, or in this case, certain counties. We can bring that out as well. And now we get a separate line for each of those. And so we can see at a quick glance, because of that coloring, where things were above our target or above the average, or where they're below it. We can see which of these counties maybe started high but finished low, or where they started high and stayed high. So it can tell you a lot in a short amount of information, but you still have that full trend line there to work with as well. And I guess I didn't show you about coloring the line. I'll do that real quick. So here the line is just plain gray, and you could leave it like that if you really just want to emphasize the start and the end point. But alternatively, you can bring that same color field that we have. I take that off of there and I put this dynamic color on there instead. Now we get the line colored, and you see it tries to give us two different trend lines. So we can just edit our trend line to not show per color. So then we're back to just one trend line again. So now not only are endpoints colored based on whatever we put in here as our target, but so is our line as well. And so then you can kind of see at a glance, are these lines generally in the red or are they generally gray? And maybe for your business, a high number is a good thing. And so you would probably want to switch your colors around and make them so that maybe if it's above the line, that's good, and below the line is bad. So something like that. So the coloring and the visual effect you're going for will depend on your data and what's important to you. But this is just a technique to help emphasize, as I said, where you started versus where you are now, and kind of the trend of things along the way. So I think that works out pretty well.
Jen, there's a question in the chat. Could you take that chart and bring the date into a filter and then show how the endpoints react as you change date?
Sure. So let's copy this over here. So we could give our user a filter like this. So maybe we'll just see how it's been doing for the last. My data is pretty sparse, so this might not be the greatest example. But yeah, we can certainly do that. So here I've taken out the first half of the data, and now we're just showing what that looks like. Or you can take out the last half and see how it looks from there. So yeah, you could absolutely put date as a filter and let your user interact with it that way too. Any other questions?
There was a question about real life examples. You might be able to provide some insight there.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Someone asked for some real life examples where this has been useful.
Ah, okay. Of a sparkline specifically?
Yep. And also to show the dynamic color calculation.
Oh, show the color, sure. So some examples of where sparklines are useful. I've seen some people use them where they're wanting to show a long history. So you might be comparing maybe something like stocks, where you're comparing how something performs over time, and you want to get a general sense of that pattern, but you don't necessarily care about each and every single data point. So I might not care what day this is. I mean, in stocks you might, but maybe for my data, I don't really care that this is the 4th of April. I'm more interested in this general trend. Are things down in these low peaks? Do we have a lot of high peaks? Is it a pretty stable, steady path? Or is it really volatile? So I think sparklines work well when it's the overall shape of the data, the overall pattern that you care more about, and you don't need to know exactly what happened on which day. And you can always enable the tooltip, like I just have left the generic ones here so far. So if somebody was really curious about why do we have this big spike, you can get that from the tooltip. But the point of the sparkline is to just get a quick glance of the pattern without having to see all the other labels and headers and things cluttering it up. You can just get that from the color and the overall shape of the line. I've seen some examples where people will just color the end point. So maybe it's something like what you were doing earlier, Rob, with comparing to previous year. So maybe you show the most recent year in the sparkline, and then maybe you color the end point to say, compared to where we were at this point last year, how are we looking now? And so maybe that end point is red if you're below where you were and blue if you're above it or something like that. You can use these in a lot of different ways. And then to the question about this calculation, sure. So all I'm doing is a true false calculation. So I'm just saying that my measure, in this case counting the capacity, is greater than or equal to something else. So right now I'm comparing it to the overall average of all my data points that are included in the view, the window average. Earlier I had just a hard number in there. And if we apply that, or you can reference a parameter, lots of things you can do with this. And because I only want the two colors, it's either above it or equal to it or it's below it, I'm just doing it as a Boolean, which is the most performant calculation type. You could write it all out, and say, if this is greater than that, then good, else bad. You could go to all those links, but there's no need to. I already only have these two options. And so this is just extra processing and extra typing for that matter, when just a Boolean will give me the same effect. And then just in case anybody wanted to see this one again, this is that table calculation. If first is 0 or last is 0, then give me my measure. And Rob pointed this out earlier, that unwritten here, but Tableau is performing it, is else null. So that's already by default part of this logic, so I don't need to specify it. And that's pretty much it. So like I said, really simple. You can go from the basic line chart to something that looks a little bit nicer with just a couple of extra steps. And then having that dual axis really gives you the power to do some cool things with those endpoints, with coloring and so on. Any other questions? Sounding like not. Okay.
Nope.
Then let's
No other questions.
Move on. Okay, thanks, Pat. So next, I just wanted to share with you all some of the updates we have. Let me get back to our agenda here. For Data for Good. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting today, our Madison Tug is, I guess, becoming known among other tugs for doing volunteer work. It's just something I started in 2018, and every year I try to find us at least a couple of projects where our Madison Tug folks can give back to the local nonprofits through the data visualization. And this year we've been working with these two organizations, the Nature Conservancy of Wisconsin, and we're currently working with Madison Cat Project to take their data and give them some data visualizations they can use on their website or in a brochure or present in a board meeting or however they want to use it. And the Nature Conservancy of Wisconsin worked out really nicely this year because they're actually celebrating their 60th anniversary, and we're working on a media campaign for that, and they had all these events planned. I'm pretty sure a lot of those unfortunately had to be either changed or canceled because of the pandemic, but they were still really excited to share some of the work that they've been doing over their 60-year history, and data visualization was a great way to do that. So unfortunately, my colleague in the volunteer work, Robert Salas, was not able to help present this today, but I will show you on behalf of both of us some of the work that we did for the Nature Conservancy. So our visualizations for this are actually on our Madison Tug public site. I don't know how many of you follow us there, probably not too many. And to be honest, we don't publish a lot of stuff out here, but this is one of the places where we are using this site as for some of this work. So let me bring this up and show you some of the cool visits that we did. So this is just kind of a welcome slide describing a little bit about why they're celebrating the 60th. And then this view is one that Robert built that I thought was a really great way to convey this long history, 60 years worth of conservation. So maybe I should say a little bit about Nature Conservancy. Sorry about that. So they help protect land and water and work with farmers, and they have initiatives around the state to basically help improve the land and protect it. So this visualization plots all the different properties that they've helped protect throughout the state and over time. So if we go ahead and use the animation option, so this will start playing through, and every time a new property is acquired, or I should say protected, then it gets added to the map. We might have a little bit of a lag here, sorry about that, but you'll hopefully see it start to play through. So what I love about this one that Robert did is he's got the year counting on the visualization, but then he has that number not just stay in the same place, but he actually moves it around the map so that when we switch over to a new decade, the number moves as well. So then it kind of cues you to say, we've entered a new decade, something has changed. And while these are accumulating in the map, they're also accumulating in this area chart over here. So property protection is kind of moving slowly but steadily through the 60s and through the 70s. And I'll stop the animation part and just jump ahead. We'll jump into the 90s just so you can see what that looks like. So the map fills in more and more, and the area chart fills in. And then we also have some text that they gave us that describes some of their key efforts during certain time periods. So that's what's going into this green text box here. And so now you see that our area chart's starting to fill up even more. We'll jump ahead here to 2010, and it fills up even more. And so it's just a really neat way, I think, to represent just the sheer quantity of how many acres they've protected as well as where they're located geographically. And then I'll just jump all the way to the end here. You can see the big total. So yeah, slow and steady for the first several decades, and then they really added a lot of acreage in the last several decades. So that was really neat to see, and I thought the visualization told that story pretty well. They're also interested in seeing more specifically about how many acres were protected by county. So we have a bar chart surrounding, a split bar chart surrounding a map, because there are too many to just list all in one chart and still be able to see all the details. So we ended up putting the counties with more acreage on one half and splitting out the counties with less acreage on the other half, and then have some interactivity between the two charts so that you can, if you're not sure where Douglas County is, you can hover over it and see where it is located on the map. They were also interested in acknowledging their supporters to their projects. So some people will leave money in their will. Some people will actually give them rights to land that they still own, so people will transfer ownership. There's lots of ways that people can support this. And then some people just donate money to help Nature Conservancy put that money where it's most used. So we thought it was really neat to see that they had supporters in not just every county, but actually in almost every single zip code of Wisconsin and throughout the US. I think that was the biggest surprise to me, was being able to show that, yeah, of course, the supporters are concentrated in Wisconsin. This is the Wisconsin Nature Conservancy. They are, in fact, throughout the US. And then, as you might imagine, a lot of the supporters are in the areas with the highest population. And so we did these little inset maps of Madison and Milwaukee and called out the zip codes where the most number of supporters were with these annotations. So we're able to use some of these Tableau features, I think, to good effect to be able to highlight some of the key points in their data. And then this chart is a kind of an infographic-y type look at a unit chart, just looking at the different acreage protected by land type, because they don't just protect forests, although that's definitely the area they protect the most of. They also are interested in grasslands and wetlands and waterways. And so we found some icons that we could represent that. So you get a sense of just the number of icons. Like you just get the sense that there's a lot of land being protected. And then you can tell because of all the trees that there's a lot of forest. So hopefully this was a nice, effective way to quickly show that there are differences by land type and also the general sense of volume. And then the last one we have here is just a map with some more icons, which is so much fun to do these projects because I don't know about all of you, but in my daily life, I usually do a lot of just standard line charts and bar charts and things, which are great. They're definitely the workhorses of data visualization, but it's fun to be able to do these projects where we have opportunities to use more icons and more interactivity than perhaps we do in our work life. So in this map, we're able to show not where land is protected, but where they've actually established partnerships and are working with, in many cases, it's farmers. In this case, it was Langley County potato growers and Iron County working on climate adapted forest management. So we can just kind of show where some of their other efforts are throughout the state. And just a little Tableau tip for you to fill in all this text. I just asked them to put their notes in an Excel sheet. So I just have one column that's the county name and one column that's the text. And then I just use that as a data source. And then I can just pull that text directly into the tooltip. I did not have to type all this out. So I was glad they were willing to accommodate that request. It made it a lot easier to pull this in here and a lot faster for updating it later. If they want to add an additional county or change their description, they just have to change that Excel sheet. So where you can make things like that a little more automatic for Tableau to consume it, I highly recommend it. So that was the Nature Conservancy. So we are done with this one. They are, I believe, in the process of launching these dashboards from their own website. That should happen soon if it hasn't already. And then other people will be seeing this work that we did for them. And we are very glad to introduce them to Tableau, and hopefully we'll get them working on data visualization in the future as well. The other project that we've been working on, and again, I apologize, you're stuck listening to me today. I had hoped that my fellow volunteers, Brad Darwin and Xiaoming Ma, Brad's at CUNA Mutual and Xiaoming's at the Department of Children and Families as well. I hope they'd been able to co-present with me, but neither of them were able to today. So I'm covering all of our work. And I'm not going to show you too much from this one. It's still very much in progress. But I guess as sort of a warm up to wanting to do more of this and get more of you involved in 2021, I'll just make the pitch again. This is a fun way to do things that you don't normally get to do in work. So first, we just spent a lot of time exploring the data. You see a lot of different worksheets here where we're just trying to get to understand the data a little bit better, start looking for patterns and trends. And then what we're doing now is kind of refining those, polishing them, and getting down to what will probably be the set of visualizations that we'll share with the Madison Cat Project. And by the way, they're a nonprofit group that takes in cats that need homes, and they do spaying and neutering and health checks and give medicines to cats who are sick. And they have an extensive foster network where they get cats ready to be adopted, and then they adopt them out, hopefully to their forever home. So that's what they do. And so they have all kinds of data over the years on how many cats have come in, how many cats have been adopted out, the color of the cat, the gender of the cat, the age of the cat, and so on. So for this one, we've been having a lot of fun thinking about how to make this more appealing to a general audience. So this table is us just understanding the data. What I really wanted to show you is being able to use some of these icons. So these are their brand colors, and this pink cat is representing how many cats they've actually adopted out over the last 4 years. You see a nice upward trend there, and it's just kind of a fun way to show a line chart. You certainly get the pattern of the data, but because we're able to use these icons and these bright colors, it's hopefully more eye-catching and fun for a general audience. So they can put this on their website, then you might get to show to your boss, for example. And then one more example of this, we have this chart looking at the number of cats that were adopted by the age of the cat. And here we're able to use some fun functionality in Tableau. So I have an animation on this one too, so we can actually see how those numbers have changed over the years. Not much, as it turns out, but it's still kind of fun for people to be able to play with that. And I just wanted to point out that this visualization is built using the exact same dual axis technique that I just showed you with the Sparkline. So we have one axis that's the bar, and we have one axis that's this little cat icon. And then they're just both colored to be the same, so that you have the cat kind of coming out from the bar, which I thought was a cute effect. And that's just the dual axis. I think the only trick with this one is that I had to drop the opacity down. So if I had this a full bar, you see it actually cuts off the back of the cat. So I just made that a little bit transparent, and then the cat kind of comes to the front of the bar. So a little trick there for you too. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun getting to know their data and finding fun ways to visualize cats. And we hope to have these in a more polished and final place to be able to share with you at a future meeting.
Hey, Jen,
All right.
how do people raise their hand to participate in these projects?
I love it. That is exactly what I was coming to next. So for 2021, what we're going to do is try something a little bit different. So as I said, I've been doing this since 2018, and every year I try out something a little different just to get a sense of what works best for this group, what works best for our nonprofit partners, what works best for those of us organizing it, which so far has just been me. And so we're going to try something new in 2021. I'm going to get data ahead of time. And what I want to do is have sort of a hackathon type model where we'll set up a particular day, and anybody who wants to participate can join in the virtual meeting. We'll make the data set available, and people can just kind of come in, and when they're free, we might set it for, say, a 3-hour block or something like that. Come in, open the data, build some things, and then we'll have the breakout rooms available. So if people wanted to collaborate together on something, they could. And then the idea is that at the end of that time period, we just take whatever visualizations were created and give them to the organization that gave us the data. So hopefully this one would be a little bit less preparation for anybody. That's certainly less of a time commitment. It would just be for a few hours, and hopefully give you guys some opportunity to play with some new data, try out some new things, and then work together if you wanted to. So that's my plan for 2021. So if you want to be part of that, I would love for you to get involved. You can just email me directly. My email's on the slide. If you're on Slack, and I hope you all are or will be soon, you can send me a message there. We do actually have a Slack channel specifically related to volunteering. You see it there. It's volunteering-opportunities. You can join that channel. And we'll certainly be sending out communications to this group when we have the first event scheduled. So I'll do one for sure. We'll see how that goes. And if it is really popular and we have a lot of fun with it, we might do a couple of those throughout the year. Also in 2021, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, I really hope to get back into doing more of the in-person volunteering that we used to do with the food banks. We did the lunch truck. We've done a few of those things that are a lot of fun. Some of them are outdoors, so I'm really hoping that we can find some opportunities that are still able to keep people safe and that people feel comfortable doing. And then we'll just kind of see how the year goes, whether we're able to get back into our regular quarterly schedule or not. So yes, please reach out to me if you're interested. That would be fantastic. We'd love to have more of you participate. And then the last thing I want to say about 2021 is we are working now to start scheduling meetings. So our intention is to have a pretty regular offering of meetings throughout the year between us and the Madison Tug. There's also the Milwaukee Tug, and some of you have probably attended our Wisconsin Tug meetings All of these have been virtual for the last several months, and we anticipate them being virtual at least through the first several months of 2021 as well. So we don't have any dates set yet. We'll be meeting soon to start putting all that content together. But I did want to just let you know we do intend to continue having these virtual meetings throughout 2021. And if you have something that you'd love us to cover, let us know. If you heard somebody else present in a different meeting that you think would be a great speaker for us, let us know. If you yourself would like to present, we would love to have you. So please reach out to any of us on the leadership team, join the Slack channel, however works for you, and let us know what you'd like to see in these meetings, because we're starting planning now. And you'll see those meetings show up on our user group homepage there. And of course, we'll send out email communications to anyone who's ever registered for one of our meetings. So we'd love to see you back in 2021. Maybe in person at some point. If not, we'll just keep providing virtual content for you all. And I see we are almost exactly on time. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. Hopefully you learned a few things, got a few tricks. We have been recording this, so we will share this with everybody as well. Hope you have a great rest of your afternoon. If there are any last questions, feel free to stay on, and I will as well. We can help address those. Otherwise, thanks, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Jen.